Hello again, bow hunters. This is Ron with Stay Sharp. In this video we're looking at the brand new Evolution Series 2.0 single bevel broadhead. I bought a 3-pack that just arrived the other day. One is missing. I've got it in a guide right now, but I bought the 200 grain single bevel version. This is what they look like, and you'll notice that there's a coating on them, some sort of a paint or Cerakote or ceramic coating or something like that. We'll talk about that in a minute. I've said it before that when single bevel companies put a coating on there, it kind of confounds your work because you need to get rid of all of that coating, because you can't sharpen paint or ceramic coating. When you get a burr on this side, you need to break the burr off, and so that nice coating and that nice logo is going to go away. Upon inspection, it feels a little toothy, and I can see that they didn't break any burr off on this head. Yet when I grab the other one, it feels smoother, but you can see, maybe we can catch the light here, they spent some time breaking the burr off on the back side and getting rid of the coating that's on there. I'll see if I can get it there we go. That white line that you see there, it's really prominent, is actually a bevel on the back side, and they did that when they broke off the burr. Now, like as I said, when I grab the other one, that doesn't exist. There is no white line, and this edge feels a little bit more burr-like, as if they didn't break off the burr. Now, I would prefer they not do that. Any of these single bevel companies that put a coating on there, I don't want a bevel on the backside. That defeats the purpose of a single bevel. So don't put a bevel on the backside. We're going to grind all of that coating off, and if you're worried about corrosion, well, you've got the coating ground off here and you're oiling it, so there should be no problem oiling what they've done here by putting a bevel on the backside of a single bevel. So we will do all of the standard protocols that we do with heads. We will look at them under the microscope, and we will put them in the sharpness tester to see what the edge is. So I will be right back. Now you got to see the edges of the head that's had the burr removed, and you can see the white line here, and the head that has not had that burr removed, hence the lack of presence of that white line. In the microscope videos, I showed you the edge as well as the back side of this one with the burr removed. So let's see what the out-of-the-box sharpness is for the two different grind styles that they produced. So this is, again, no burr removed, and I can feel it a little toothy. So let's see what the score is. Oh, let's blank it out here. There we go. $4.73 for the head without the burr removed. Now we're going to reload the machine and test the head that has the burr removed and see what the results are. So this is the head that's had the burr removed, and you can see the white line, and I can feel the difference as it relates to sharpness. Alright, so let's see what sort of an edge we get now. Much sharper. I've said it in most of my videos that any presence of the burr will mimic dullness. So this one had the burr removed and is sharper than the one without the burr removed. But I also say in all my videos that out-of-the-box sharpness is only a snapshot in time. And as soon as you practice with them, as soon as you take an animal with them, you own sharpening. So you better get good at it, and sharpening these heads are what we're going to talk about next. Alright, after looking at these heads and their bevel angle, which I believe they stated was 28 degrees on the 2.0, there are two options. One is the version C guide with the white roller in the 1, 2, 3rd position up. And if we look at that and place the stick on the roller and look at the bevel, that gives us a good edge. So the version C kit, the square dowel, is one option. I'm not going to go that route. My preference is the fixed blade guide with 25 inches of tape on the roller. I just think the rolling guides for a straight edge, it's a little bit easier to manipulate and you get a little bit better edge. The goal here is to make this edge parallel to the roller. When you place it down, you want to make sure it does not rock. If this edge were hitting first, I would have to bring that edge in or this edge out. You want this edge so that when you tip down, it all hits at the same time. If it were hitting like this, well, logic says push that in or pull this out. But right now I've got it set right where I want it, and if I look at it, I'm right on the bevel. So 25 inches of tape on the fixed blade guide gets you where you want to be. Now, because of this coating, and there's this funky wire sticking out here, and I think that was the process of milling the slot. I think it's metal. I don't think it's any part of the coating. I'm guessing I can just break it off. There it is. Now it's gone. Just some extraneous machining, wiring for their future bleeders. When you have a head that's got a coating on it, before you even start sharpening the bevel, get rid of that coating. You cannot sharpen paint or ceramic coating or whatever they want to put on here, and you can't feel for a bevel very well, so you need to get rid of that first. And Breaking the burr off or getting rid of the coating on single bevels is fairly easy. You lay it until it's flat and you simply stroke it. And you can see what's coming off on my diamond plate, right? I'm starting to get rid of that coating. I want to get rid of all of it. So I will go through that process of getting rid of the coating. And you don't have to press down hard, just trap it flat. And you get rid of it. So I'm going to keep going through that process of getting rid of all of that coating to make sharpening a heck of a lot easier. And when I get it removed, I will be back. At this point, I've gotten rid of enough of the coating that I can sharpen. I used a combination of 240 and 400. You can see it along these edges to remove that coating. It reveals some of the machining swirl marks. No big deal. Nobody cares about that. As long as we've got the the coating removed all the way along this edge, we're good to go. Let's see if we'll focus here. There is some sort of machining excess that you can see here. Obviously, when they machine this side, they must feed in this direction, and then it leaves a burr that shows up here. That's not coating, that's physical metal. Again, no big deal. Doesn't harm anything. It just appears when I was noticing it while I was removing the coating. So the next step is going to be starting with 240. We've got our correct angle with the tape, so we've got good contact, but the only way to check that is with a Sharpie marker. So we will color up the edge with Sharpie. This will tell you when you've got your head placed in the guide correctly, that you aren't going to see wear on one edge and not on the other edge. If we see all sorts of Sharpie marker wear out here but none here, well, then that needs to go in or this needs to come out. So we'll give it a couple of strokes on 240 and take a look at it now. Alright, so I gotta come out, I think, a little bit on here, so I will push it out just a little. Alright, that's looking good. So at this point, I will tighten my screw, and not much. You do not need to tighten these screws much. You don't want to crack the plastic. You're not putting lug nuts on a tractor here. You don't need to tighten it that much. So I'm going to go through this with 240 grit until I get a burr on the back side. And when that happens, I will come back and we will talk about burr breaking and what has to be done on the back side. So I will be back. Alright, so I can tell you right now that this is some good steel. This is some nice hard steel. They have been known for making good broadheads out of good steel. And you can tell as you're sharpening. Alright, now because we've gotten rid of that coating, we can see if we have raised a burr. Does the paper hang up on a burr? Yes, it does. All along the edge, the paper hits and stops. And maybe if I zoom in, you can see that black line. That is the burr that I raised. Now, you want to break off that burr. So here we did ourselves the favor of getting rid of that coating. And we're going to, again, trap it flat. Real light pressure. There is no pinching going on by me. I'm trapping it flat and stroking it on the diamonds only to break the burr off. There is no need for any sort of a heavy pinch action here. Now we're going to check, and I can feel already that our burr is gone. The paper slides right off. And at this point we're going to switch to 240 grit, but before we do that, we need to get rid of all of the 400 grit that may be on here. We don't want to contaminate the 400 grit plate with any of the 240 granules, so make sure you do that in between. And I'm going to sharpen at 400 next, and we'll come back and talk about the burr. All right, I think we've got the burr. I can sense it as I roll. I can feel it. If you've been sharpening as long as I have, you can tell. Yes, we do. We can feel the burr all along the edge. And so that is our 400 grit finish with the burr on it. Like we did with 240, we're going to lay it flat. Ever so slightly give it a pinch just so you can keep it flat. So the act is to get it on the blade, lay it till the shadow disappears and you're flat, and lightly stroke it along the diamond plate. And you would want diamond plates with these heads. They're good steel. You could use sandpaper, but you're going to burn through a lot of it. Good steel needs diamond plates. All right. Now we're going to see if the burr is completely gone. Which it is. We broke it off all the way along the edge. And I can tell you right now, this edge is already feeling very good. When we sharpen, don't push down hard on the diamond plates. The fastest way to wreck your diamond plates is to allow or to put down a lot of downward force. You won't get done any quicker. There's no advantage in pushing down hard. All that will do is destroy your diamond plates and make your blade or your head flex in the guide. The weight of your hand is enough. You do not have to push down hard. If you're pushing down hard, you're going to destroy diamond plates, and you're going to be calling me asking about diamond plates. Light pressure is the key. All right, now we're going to switch to 800 grit, but before we do, we want to get all of that 400 grit off the roller, off the head. And you can use an old toothbrush, you can use a can of compressed air, whatever it takes to get that off. You don't want to contaminate 800 grit with 400 grit particles. So now we will go into sharpening at 800 grit, and we'll come back and talk about the burr again. All right, I think it's burr checking time. This was 800 grit. Paper hangs up. So we've got a burr all along the edge. It's turning into a pretty nice edge. Same process. Lay the blade on there. Tip it. Light strokes. Again, we want to make sure it's flat. Never introduce a bevel to the back side of a single bevel. You are creating a chisel, flat on the back side, beveled on the front. The whole purpose of a single bevel is to be a single bevel. Don't make it a big bevel on one side and a small bevel on the back side. Maximize the bone splitting and the rotation by having only one bevel. So now we will check it again. We slide off. There's no burr to speak of that we are catching on. Again, we will wipe it clean. Make sure that there is no 800 grit that we would transfer over to the 1200 grit plate. And 1200 grit is where we are going to go next. I'll be back. Alrighty. Let's check for a 1200 grit burr. As you go up in grits, the burr gets smaller and smaller, but if the paper hangs up on it, you know you've achieved it. And again, we need to break that burr off with the grit that created it. Lay it flat. Very light pressure. The finish that you're putting on the bevel side is the same finish you're putting on the flat side. So you think you have a single bevel and you only own sharpening one edge. That's not the case. You sharpen both sides of the blade with each grit. Let's test it out again. We slip right off, so we've transferred a little bit of that burr to this edge. Let's give it a couple of light strokes just to make sure we got rid of all the burr at 1200 grit. Let's give it another little pinch. We're making sure we're getting rid of all that burr before we go on to 2500. And that's where we will go next. But first we need to clean up the guide. We don't want to transfer any of the prior grits to the 2500 grit. And then we will switch to our 5th grit, 2500. We will repeat the process, sharpen until we get a burr, break off the burr, and I'll be back. Now we have done 2500 grit, and as you can see, my red Canon camera is showing up pretty good in the reflection. But did we get a burr? Yes, we did. We are hanging up on a very tiny burr. A 2500 grit burr is incredibly small. You would be hard pressed to feel it with a fingerprint. And as we did with every other grit, you need to break that burr off. When you get to the highest grit, in this case 2500 grit, we will break the burr off, give it a few strokes on the bevel, break the burr off, back to the bevel. If you followed my channel any length of time, you understand that the burr I always liken to a paper clip. You can only bend it so many times before it breaks. We're going to chase that burr to this side now. Now we've brought a little bit of a burr to the flat side. Let's get rid of it. And this I found is real cheap insurance to make sure you've gotten rid of the burr and that the back side, the flat side, is as smooth as the bevel side. We're going to get rid of any remnant of the burr. There can be no burr on this blade, otherwise it's going to mimic dullness, which we do not want. Alright. So we are getting a fantastic finish on the back side and on the bevel side. So I'm going to clean up this guide again, and then we're going to move on to the buffing stage next. Now let's talk buffing. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You do not need to spend money on a leather strop. If you do, you own the cleaning and redressing of that. Cereal box cardboard, mashed potato box cardboard, instant rice cardboard is all free. Produces the same results as leather, as denim, as smooth wood. There's no point in spending money on a strop that you have to clean over the life of the strop. Simply use cardboard, then eat more cereal or rice, and you'll have a free strop. When we buff, it's only a backwards motion. We lift, backwards, lift. And you do not have to worry about overdoing buffing. You can't overdo it. You're simply polishing that edge so that it is like a scalpel, and that will show under the microscope, which is why I use a microscope and why I use the sharpness meter. I can't cheat. There's no way for me to cheat what it looks like under the microscope or what it looks like in the sharpness tester. If you're not employing those things and you're trying to put out a video and you rub your thumb across it and say, yeah, it's sharp, well, there's no way to quantify that. That's why I try to quantify it with real things like a microscope and a sharpness meter. Now, the short time that we have buffed, and you will get some build up along the back of the bevel. You can just use your finger on the back side. As you can see, we are really putting an edge on this thing. And when we get done buffing, and again, you don't have to worry about overdoing it. You can do this until the cows come home. You aren't going to take off that much metal, but as you can see, I've gone from white buffing compound to black. Now, if you do a bunch of heads, that strop is going to get incredibly impacted with metal, and that's what that is. You've got to get that off, otherwise you're trying to sharpen metal with metal instead of the abrasive grit that's suspended in your buffing compound, which means you would have to dress all that off, make it smooth, apply new buffing compound. When this gets gunked up, I throw it away, eat another box of potatoes, and I got a free leather strop. So I'm going to keep buffing, and then we're going to look at this under the microscope. Oh, I should say that when I've buffed, I will create a micro burr. It's too small to see. Clean off your guide. You can either use the buffing compound on the edge, I'll show you that, on the edge of something stiff, trap it with the cardboard, do it like we did with all the other ones, trap it flat, or you can go back to your 2500 grit plate and do the same burr breaking after buffing. There is very little burr that will occur, but it's still there, so make sure you spend some time getting rid of it. So I'm going to keep buffing. I've been buffing for a while now, and before I go on to the microscope and the sharpness tester, let's take a look at our edge. So as you can see, it is a mirror finish that we've put on there. So let's take that mirror finish and look at it under the microscope and on the sharpness tester. As you saw under the microscope, we produced a pretty good edge, a mirror's edge. Here we have the factory edge and the edge that I produced, but all of that is going to be based on our score. So let's see what we get. 94. I always try to get a sub 100 score if I can, and that is akin to a razor blade. I've sharpened, or I've tested razor blades on this tester, so let me show you how this edge compares to a razor blade. We've produced a very lethal edge on this head, and I can tell you right now, these are good heads. This is good steel. I'm always impressed with this company. They produce some fantastic broadheads. This is no exception. I like the little bit steeper angle, the 28 degrees. That's a more durable angle than, I think they were 20 degrees initially. When it comes to the Tonto tip, whether you value them or not, that's typically a freehand operation. If you see, you've got a complete flat bevel here from the factory, a complete flat bevel after you've honed it, but on the back side there is a slight, you want to call it a double bevel. You can do that by holding it in a guide and stroking it on a diamond plate to duplicate that. Same thing on this side. It's just to prevent a flat or blunt nose where the two planes would meet if there were no Tonto tip. So that is a freehand operation. But as I said, I'm impressed. I always am impressed with this company and any of their broadheads. They do a fantastic job. You will end up getting rid of that nice coating that was on the backside. Don't worry about that. You value sharp more than you value the coating. And I tell you what, that is a scary, lethal edge. So thanks for watching.